Hey, I'm Jason Wood, the VA Loan Guy and host of the Armed and Ready podcast. Please come and check out this exciting episode we have for you. Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Armed and Ready podcast. I'm your host, Jason Wood, the VA Loan Guy. Today we have a really cool guest with us from Pi Energy Company. We have Phil Layton, who's also a Navy veteran. So Phil, I want to welcome you to the show, man, and thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we got a lot of neat stuff to talk about. But let's dig into a little bit of your military past and talk about, the time you spent in the Navy. And I know you're an engineer in the Navy. So tell us how that came to be. How did you consider joining the military? What was that push to get you in?
I had just gotten out of graduate school and I was working in a place called Maxwell Technologies. And we were working on some interesting stuff for the DoD, some pulse power plasma research. We're doing some space hardware testing for radiation. And one of the VPs there was a Navy engineering duty officer. And he asked if I could join, if I'd be interested in joining. And actually, it was an interesting program. What they do is they're looking for people with certain technical expertise. And what the Navy had was a broad spectrum of technologies that they were interested in following and felt that it would be better that these people were actually out at the universities and civilian life doing whatever they were doing, their research, and staying in the cutting edge of whatever technology they're working on. So I thought this was an interesting opportunity. I really didn't know what I was getting into, but I had everybody in my family had been in the military. My dad was a Marine, my brother was in the Air Force, my uncles were in the Marines. So it's I was drawn to it just as an interesting, So I joined as a direct commissioned engineering duty officer, actually, and most of my time for 10 years was spent as in the reserves.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's cool. So as an engineer in the Navy, what do? I mean, you're not building bridges, obviously, because you're on a boat. So what does an engineer do?
Yeah, so there's several things. So there was one part of it was the Navy wanted to have this skill set, this database of people with specific skill sets. Mine was pulse power plasma physics. But at the same time, the engineers for the Navy do many different things. The Chang on the boat, the chief engineering officer, would be responsible both for the operations of the boat, for damage control, and the other jobs that the engineers would do on base would be supporting engineering projects that are being developed or are operational in the fleet. You may have the cathodic protection system, all those type of, the Navy is heavy platform based, and there's a lot of equipment that needs to be not only maintained, but also the new cutting edge technologies need to be brought to the fleet. So you need a technical group that represents the Navy and helps them implement those with the different contractors, et cetera.
Nice. That's really cool. Any fun places you got to visit or cool stories you can share with us from your time in service?
Yeah, so it was, I was lucky. I got to see a lot of different things. I went to shipyards and got to see some of these I got to see the DDG 51, the new Arleigh class destroyer. At the time they were new, being built in Portland, Maine. So the whole ship was sitting up on dry dock, and you'd be able to crawl around inside the ship and see how these things are put together. that was one of the interesting uh, places I got to see. The other one was doing a post shakedown cruise on a cruiser off the coast here of San Diego, where I stood watch, got to see how and do live fire drills. Um, and what was interesting is how hard the team works. I know the Chang was he was at 2 o'clock in the morning. He was still working, and then he got up at 4 o'clock every day. We were out there, so he had like 4 hours of sleep, and they're
Wow.
constantly going through drills, working through all the different aspects of the operation of the ship. So that was a really a unique experience for me. I remember one of the problems is being a civilian for most of the time. I was in grad, off working, and then coming into the Navy for 2 weeks. I was frequently bumping my head because I was a little tall on these Navy ships. Takes a while getting used to
Yeah,
ducking under, going through the portholes and stuff. So. Uh,
that's funny.
Yeah, and some other places I've been to where Hawaii, we go and do some inspections, and I was in Philadelphia shipyard. So I had some interesting places I got to see during my time there.
That's awesome. So tell us what you're doing now, Pi Energy. That sounds pretty exciting. I heard a little bit about it, but I'll let you tell us what Pi Energy is, and what's your role there, and what are you guys up to?
Thanks. Yeah, so we started. I'm the CEO and one of the founders of Pi Energy. What we're doing is a new solar PV that's flexible, has high performance, and is non-toxic. So what's different from this technology that we're developing from your standard crystalline panels is that this can be wrapped around any surface. So now you're opening up solar PV to things like wrapping on your car, buses,
Oh, okay.
electric delivery trucks, on wrapped around the side of buildings, on clothing. So what we're trying to do is expand where solar can go. And what's interesting is the electric vehicle, buses, and trucks, that market expands. This will allow you to put solar on these platforms where they already have storage. So normally people have heard about this thing called the duck curve. You're producing a lot of solar in the middle of the day, but what happens at night? Well, this allows you to directly charge your car using sunlight. So even if you don't have a charging network nearby. So we've been developing this technology. It's been very exciting. We're here in San Diego. And I'm really excited about the potential for this technology to expand solar. And we found a lot of people that have been interested and new markets that we never had heard about as we went along this journey. One of them is actually on data centers, these huge buildings that consume like 1% of the electric grid power worldwide. And it's really the roofs themselves were not designed to handle the heavy weight of crystalline silicon panels. So there's this huge opportunity to wrap these large consumers of electricity with solar. So there's a lot of interesting potential markets that as we've been going through our journey here, that we're finding.
Well, in solar, from my very elementary knowledge of it, panels themselves are pretty expensive, from what I understand, and maybe not that efficient, which is why we don't, have them on top of our car, a panel on top driving around everywhere, right, as a big spoiler or something.
Yeah, and then the other challenge is if you have a big flat panel, it might fly off.
Right.
So one of the things what we're looking for is make something really lightweight, low cost. The manufacturing process that we're looking at would be a roll to roll, and would enable lower cost manufacturing, low capex. But the other thing is you really want to wrap this on the car rather than have some fixed panel sitting on there. So
Yeah.
it's an exciting potential to be able to not only extend the range of your EV, but to kind of offset your carbon footprint where you're guaranteed to have solar charging your car. Sometimes the grid is being charged by coal or natural gas, but in this case, you would know that by parking it outside, it would actually be charging, extending your range. And the interesting thing is when you get to things like buses and electric, delivery vehicles, you have this huge surface area, so you can
Yeah.
actually provide quite a bit more power.
Yeah, you got a lot of big flat panels. Those are just big rectangles on wheels, right? Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. And from what I hear too, people like have Teslas and things like that. If you're maybe taking a road trip in one of those and you got to get to a point where you can charge, you kind of have to plan like a meal stop around that, because it's not like pumping a tank of gas where you can be in and out of there in 5-10 minutes. You're 45 minutes roughly, to charge up enough to get to the next charging station. So that would be really cool. I mean, just for those existing cars that are on the road, right?
So, and then the other thing is the electric vehicle market is one of those markets that is growing. It's like 25% per a year. And the other interesting thing is all those vehicles have the potential, if they're connected to the grid, of also providing the storage that we need. So it has a two-way potential. Is you could be charging while you're driving, but you can also provide energy back to the grid when maybe the energy is more expensive. So it's a new market. It's an opportunity, and I think there's a lot of potential opportunities for new businesses in the market. Sorry, my mic fell off. So
Yeah, no, I'm just envisioning like all the different areas where you guys would be able to wrap it. I mean, I could even think, big municipalities wrap their buildings and, signs and all sorts of different things to power with, and really take a lot of that drain off the grid, and in Southern California, LA and San Diego and stuff where we're, in the summer times you can hit some brownouts and stuff. I got to imagine, once implemented in a big way, probably help lessen the impact of that type of thing, right?
The other thing is the potential for an impact in internationally. We've been approached by municipalities actually in some of the in different locations in the world where they actually have a lot of oil money, but their electrical infrastructure isn't as developed. So they have a lot of brownouts, and this means that support for things like hospitals and schools, they need to have electricity. And the challenge is they really don't have an electrical grid that they can use these big infrastructure projects, big gas plants and et cetera, that can be carried over large distances. So they're looking for these solar local production right near the source of demand. So there's been a lot of interest actually in this technology internationally, and it can provide electricity where places that are having a difficulty providing that to their population. And in this electrical potential enables them to provide electricity to schools and hospitals, so providing infrastructure support that wasn't there at the time.
Yeah, that's really cool. How long have you guys been in development of this technology? How long have you been working on it?
We've been working on it for 10 years. The technology has developed. We're in our fourth iteration. So the initial technology was really was out there from a scientific perspective. It had huge potential, but it was very difficult to build. So as we started going through our development, we had to make the technology more commercially viable by making it more manufacturable and have a lower technical risk than we had at the very beginning. The potential of that first technology that just we couldn't make it at the size scale we had, but if we could have gotten that commercially, the performance and the cost the performance would have been extremely high, and the cost extremely low using essentially plastics and metal. But it was very difficult to produce the size that we were looking at. So we gradually went and started moving towards, you learn along the way. So our current technology is leveraging manufacturing capabilities that are already in place, and has manufacturing and cost structures that are less risky than our first design. And I'm really excited about this because once we demonstrate this, I think it can be implemented rather rapidly and expanded globally, and not just in one local large manufacturing. It's easy to have multiple manufacturing centers, which makes us more competitive globally, where you can actually manufacture this in the US and compete with some of these larger manufacturing production facilities that are in the more right now located in East Asia.
Gotcha. So I'm envisioning, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm envisioning something kind of like a vinyl wrap on a car. Is that
It wouldn't be vinyl, but
right? Right.
it'd be like that wrap you put along the car. So it'd be really thin. You can wrap it around. There is some potential too that you can add coloring to it. So for houses, right now you have it on your roof, but what would be interesting is if you can add a little architectural color to the side. So now you can put the sides being one color and then the roof be maybe dark, more higher performance, but you can have some architectural siding along with it. So you can have performance and still have the aesthetics that people would be looking for.
Yeah.
If they put on their house or car.
That's really, really cool. I love it. So what's kind of coming up in the future for you guys is just kind of getting manufacturing nailed down to a point where you can really get distribution out. Is that where you guys are at this point?
We're in prototyping. The next step after that, after we prove that, we're going to go to pilot manufacturing, where we demonstrate the performance and the manufacturing. And then we've identified some existing manufacturing locations that already have some of the infrastructure, and that would be our next phase after that, would be to partner with these groups to get our first initial production runs out to customers. And then we have, after that, several different groups that are interested in forming joint ventures where we expand our manufacturing to different locations.
Yeah.
And that would be international production. And then we also have large companies that are interested in this for other applications that include wrapping around mobile electronics. And these groups are just waiting for us to demonstrate this, the first part, which is the technical development, the prototype.
Wow.
So we've got some initial results, and we're getting really close. It always takes longer. COVID has made it a little bit more challenging.
I bet. Yeah.
So it's been, it hasn't been as fast as I'd like, but we are making progress and getting close.
What's your goal to be, to market on this?
Our goal is to change the solar market so that it's not you just don't think of it as only on residential roofs and these solar farms. What we'd like to do is bring solar to the source of demand, which would be the cars, into the cities, into the apartment buildings, onto places that you couldn't put it right now, closer to the source of demand. And what I'm envisioning is that you have more decentralized power production, so that when you have these wildfires or other type of events that knock out the grid, you still have production capable in the majority of the sources. Sorry. I thought I turned that off. So, we see the market for renewable energy expanding when you increase the where you can place solar
Oh
and
yeah.
how close you can put it to the source of demand.
Yeah. Well, that's fascinating. I think it's really, really cool. Well, I wish you all the best of luck in that. That is really awesome. As we kind of wrap up here, I like to ask a lot of my guests, kind of the theme, the title of our show, Armed and Ready. What does armed and ready mean to you?
That's an interesting question. I think anybody, that's how you approach. So I look at armed and ready to be thinking strategically. I think as a country, we look ahead and we look at our challenges that we're facing and looking at them from planning how we address them. And this includes, personally for me, it's global climate change. And I think that means we can see this challenge that comes ahead. And it's an opportunity where the US can be a global leader. And I think that's the same thing from the military perspective. The military is always concerned about, addressing world challenges. And one of them is global climate change. And they can be part of the solution. And they have been frequently is developing that technology. But also as we move forward, looking strategically, how do we build partnerships and strong relationships? So I think that makes us a lot of the leadership that the US has been in is both technical and providing leadership and guidance for the world. And I think that is what I would consider to be armed and ready would be, maintaining our strategic thinking, our coalition building, and building teams across the world to help solve some of the planet's crisis or challenges.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Makes me think of India and China and their high levels of pollution and how something like this could go in there and help that, right? Well, Phil, thank you so much for being on the show today. Everybody that's watching, keep an eye on Pi Energy. I think they're onto something that we're going to see in the future, and it's going to have a really, really awesome impact for us. So, Phil, thanks for what you're doing, man, and thank you for your service and your time today. We really appreciate having you on the show.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for checking out today's episode. If you have any questions about the guests on the show, please reach out to me at valoanguy.us.